Greetings to the Super Smash Bros. Community. If this is your first time hearing from me, I go by Dr. Robotnik. To cut to the chase, as the length of this video will be quite long, this is a discussion of all 103 stages presented to us thus far in Smash Ultimate, and which ones are legal, not legal, and the gray area that present a possibility due to the new stage hazard toggle feature. In addition, at the end I will list my recommendation on a universal rule set, what this will include and why. You may be asking yourself why you should take my opinion with any weight. Well, to put it simply, I have been competing in the Smash community since 2006, and this will be the third installment I have witnessed and been a part of the birth of as far as the competitive aspect goes. While I took the game on a more serious note, becoming known for my Smash 4 play, I have been around the block long enough to explain thoroughly my reasoning. With the video being quite long, I will leave a timestamp of each of the talking points if you are only interested in certain parts of this discussion for your ease. With the pleasantries out of the way, from here forward will be a less scripted and more of a power through of the many stages we have to talk about. Okay, to begin, I've included a couple demographics as I'll go through up here on screen, and I'll also leave down in the description for anybody who wants access to these, so they can either build on them, modify them, and basically use as you're choosing. This is more of like a guide point on how I see what we essentially have moving forward as far as stages go. So we'll just get right into it. The first stage obviously is Battlefield, and yes, it's a starter. Something to note, they did fix the underbelly of the platform to be completely round, so you can't even bonk on it anymore. Battlefield has never been more balanced than it is in Ultimate, which is really exciting. Second, we have Final Destination. It's the most neutral stage probably of anything. You can't really argue against it. The first controversial stage, and probably the only one of the yes that I have here, is going to be Peach's Castle. I do believe that we shouldn't be too limiting if there's not a glaring problem. For the most part, I have walls being a bad thing, but Peach's Castle I'm going to list as the only exception to this as far as the yes go, because with stage hazards turned off, the bumper is basically null and void. The moving platform as well as the walls on this stage are so small, as well as the platform is always moving, that creating any sort of infinite is essentially non-existent. I feel this is a pretty well-balanced stage. It's got the short platform distance. Camping and runaway isn't really going to be an issue, I believe, for this stage. The only side thing that I guess that you could say is the two side platforms, which are kind of like these small little ramps, might interfere. But that would be the only glaring issue that I would have. Dreamland, you're going to see me use this word a lot, but I'm going to refer to as Battlefield clones, sort of how we use them in Smash 4, as mirrors. That's just a term that I'm going to coin now. When you hear me say mirror, that's what I mean. There will be mirrors for Battlefield as well as for Final Destination. Dreamland, it's a Battlefield mirror. We'll leave it at that. Brinstar is a very interesting stage. With hazards turned off, you can no longer collide with destroyable objects anymore. So the two flesh at the side platforms are gone. Like you can't destroy them, which makes these two interesting platforms at the side, as well as the flesh kind of circle things in the middle of the stage that you could destroy to split the stage apart. That's no longer an issue. This becomes a very interesting iteration of a Battlefield-esque stage, with the center platform being slightly askewed to the left, and the two middle platforms are actually hanging over the stage, or excuse me, over the pits rather than over the stage, which I would say gears away from the traditional tri-plat scenario. Yoshi's Story, considering the adjustments we've seen to Dreamland and what we've seen of it already, the size has been changed from what it is in Melee. Despite having Randall, I still think it should be considered a Battlefield mirror and not its own stage. Fountain of Dreams is going to be the only stage on this list that we are going to need hazards on if turning hazards off prevents the two platforms from moving. up or down. It's a unique enough in that sense that it could be considered its own stage, but possibly a mirror, but we'll get into that later with the final selection. Pokemon Stadium, as well as Pokemon Stadium 2, are identical in size. There's been a few people, I'll try to link them in here if I can find them again, I've seen on Twitter. They've done pixel measurements to show that both of these have the same width as well as the platform height, so I don't see them one or the other being weighed against each other, but transformations off, it's a very, very neutral stage. WarioWare, I'm glad to see on this list, and potentially a starter for how balanced it is. The blast zones that we've seen in previous games on the side are a little bit smaller than what we've seen, let's say, on like Smashville or Battlefield, but I don't think it's enough of an issue that we should not use it. It's a very neutral stage, it doesn't have any moving parts, and the way that the platforms are structured, you can't really get away with camping because they're so low to the ground. So definitely a good stage. Frigate Orpheon is a definite yes for me. I've seen a lot of arguments going for either with hazard toggle on and leaving it on that first iteration, and with it off, saying that the transformation between with the flip isn't as bad as in this game as it has been. With as many stages as we have, it really is not in our best interest to leave any sort of randomness or jank that could really screw with what we have as a competitive scene. We've got too much to choose from now. I'll go into this in much greater detail towards the end, but that's just kind of how I feel, that we should definitely be having hazards off for Frigate Orpheon. Yoshi's Island Brawl, very neutral stage. You can't slide off platforms, just like in Smash 4. So the issues that some characters had in Brawl, let's say Yoshi's Ground Pound, for example, where he could slide off platforms and instantly do an air from canceling off the slides, that's no longer a thing. It just has a lot of neutral aspects that aren't going to be a problem. Obviously, you have Randall 2.0 that can periodically appear. But interesting now about the stage that hasn't been a thing previously, and this also goes for Yoshi's Story Melee, is with stage hazards turned off, you no longer are going to be able to collide with the Shy Guys even if they show up, which prevents a lot of this interrupted combos and quick turnarounds that can often happen. That's really a kind of community decision, but I think going into the rules and changing it for more than one stage other than Fountain of Dreams would be a bad idea. Halberd, I'm just going to state my opinion on this. This is more of my look at the stage. One of the big problems with the stage coming in was the ship. It would just randomly attack you. There wasn't any set sequence. It wasn't like a Melee's Randall platform where it was on a timer. Especially the claw could really screw with everything. Essentially, both players would have to either come to a standstill or try to use the ship's attacks to their benefit, and it was always very character dependent on the advantages you would gain. Now that stage hazards can be turned off, you don't have the stale game that ends up there. So I think even if with hazards turned off, if it doesn't stay in the air or just on the ship and it still goes in between, whatever iteration we get is absolutely cause for legality. So that's my take on that one there. Lylat, very neutral stage. It's been around since Brawl. We can now turn tilt off. That's already been confirmed. So yes, absolutely, it is legal. I think most of the community will probably vote for it to be a counter pick, and that's obviously logical. Pokemon Stadium 2, I already touched on that with Pokemon Stadium 1, basically just a direct carbon copy. I've seen a couple of people argue that we should allow transformations for Pokemon Stadium. That might fly for one, but with walls and everything, I mean, there's really no reason for us to add that in when we've got a nice neutral stage. Pokemon Stadium 2, absolutely not on the hazards. You've got this wind hazard, which is absolutely atrocious, and ice. And both of these are terrible mechanics that really just don't promote fair gameplay. So I would say no on transformations there. Smashville, it's Starterville, but I think now with the options that we have for stages, Smashville, as well as Town and City, and I'll touch on that in a sec, should be moved to counterpicks. There's more than just a select few of characters who can do chains on Smashville for very, very low percent kills based on where the platform is hanging off the stage. This creates this really unfair pacing that's really more geared towards a counterpick than a starter. So I would really like to see it moved to counterpicks this time around. In addition, I've seen so many people complain that the music for Smashville is just not exciting. It's so boring for a lot of people. And I personally enjoy listening to the music, but I got to agree, it's really just does not get the blood moving. So that's all I'll say about Smashville. Tortimore Island. This is an interesting stage. It had a lot of glitches in the 3DS. From what we've already seen from the trailers, a lot of the problems it had, they've really done a really good job of redesigning all of the stages and their hitboxes and collisions and so forth. So I feel with the jump squat change and how getting out of water, that it would be a very legal stage to have, but I think it should be limited to a mirror to Final Destination, just like Dreamland is a mirror to Battlefield. Kalos Pokemon League, kind of the same thing. It's a clear choice for a mirror for Final Destination, but it gives people the option for a wall. This is actually very nice for those who like to pick walled stages in Smash 4. I know personally, I've seen Lucario players counterpick Wrecking Crew in Smash 4 as an Omega because of the walls. So this gives them an option, but it still leaves that over on the counterpick side for round 2, round 3, all the way up to round 5. Town and City, very much like Smashville, there's the coin terms getting structured. The randomness of the platforms moving in, the movement also being very high, preventing a lot of neutral to be had. There's some characters who can just go up to these platforms and camp, which gears more towards the counterpick aspect rather than a neutral starter. And the last of the yes is Midgar. It's almost a carbon copy of Battlefield. It has no extra effects like Dreamland. Absolutely, it's going to be a mirror. So with that, we're going to move on to the maybes. These stages have all the qualities that make for a legal stage, but has one or two glaring problems that could be skewed away from the competitive aspect. Jungle Japes and Green Greens both are essentially the same stage formation. Green Greens, the blocks are no longer going to fall. So both of these stages create these pits that could be used for camping. Green Greens has a little bit smaller pits than Jungle Jape does, but we've already seen kind of this camping go on, and I think it's called Jungle Falls, and we'll get to that in a bit, where people went just to the rock to camp, and it creates this very interesting dynamic that isn't consistent with the rest of the game, but it really just comes down to what the community thinks of these as far as legality. The next one is going to be Norfair. A big problem from just going from Brawl to Smash 4 is the ledge grab range is so gigantic that you could be halfway into the platform and you would just snap to the edge. That's no longer a thing in Ultimate. They really, really pulled down Magnet Hands, which is a very, very good feature. While I feel that could be a plus in Norfair's favor, there also is some issues with how the structure of the platforms go from basically being this V formation that allows, let's say, Meta Knight to just shuttle loop across, or Bayonetta, or Sonic to do a spin jump, if that's still a thing. There's characters who can get away with this that other highly ground-focused characters just aren't going to be able to deal with. Whether I feel it's right to ban a stage just because some character can abuse this is its own question. A big argument back in the Brawl era was people tried to find reasons to allow Temple to be allowed. But then you had people like Sonic and Meta Knight who could just make the gap from the right side going to the underneath platform, and nothing could really be done about it. They could get the percentage lead and just run away with it. So that's the presenting issue that I see with Norfair. And then the last one is Dracula's Castle. This is a new stage that we don't have any experience with, which is a huge reason why it's on the maybe and not a yes. Smash 4 had this issue with stairs, that if you had attacks that would move your body position, let's say like Yoshi's forward smash moves him a little bit, or Captain Falcon with a pullback and whatnot, that it would cause you to slide down the stairs. The stairs on Dracula's Castle are quite large, but that's not the only issue that I see presented with it. It also is such an interesting gap between the wall on the left side of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs that could really allow for some characters to camp, and very much the Yoshi's Island melee with the pipe on the left side. So that's kind of my gray area on the stage, and why I don't think it's a for sure yes. We really don't know how it's going to react. So for now, I would say that we leave it off the for sure yes. Next up is the if. What basically put stages into this category is heavy reliant on how hazard toggle is going to affect them. There is a high possibility with the proper usage of the hazard toggle that these stages could be legal, but we don't know that off the bat. We might know that if we get a demo before launch, but as it stands now, I think it's fair to put these on an if as a possibility that need to be analyzed after release and not on opening stage lists. So let's get into it. Super Happy Tree. This is the Yoshi stage from 64. With hazards turned off, there's two possibilities that I see could happen. One, you can't destroy the clouds, and the other is that the clouds don't exist. That is just the main stage. If the clouds still exist, even if you can't destroy them, 100% banned. There's just no way around it. It's the gaps off to the right side of Super Happy Tree is so big that some characters even struggle to even get over there. As a regular counterpick, if it was just the main stage, the slow platforms create a lot of interesting plays, especially off of spikes, because spikes are affected by slopes. That it could be used to interrupt people who are very combo heavy. A very interesting stage. Next up is Rainbow Cruise. The stage has actually seen some legality even with the full transformations before. That also was because we didn't have much stages to choose from, so we were very open to letting some jank get through. That's no longer the case. So if hazard works to limiting us just to the ship, the wall inside the ship is small enough that it's easily techable, as well as you can DI out of it. I don't think it's an issue. The platforms are very small. It would be a very interesting stage. It's a yes if it stays on the ship. Delfino Plaza. As much as I love this stage, anybody in my region who knows me knows that I will gentleman to this stage, and it was one of my favorites that was legal in Brawl. And for a time in Smash 4. The big problem that we had with it that did end up getting fixed for the most part is during the triplat transformations, the ceiling would shrink, which would cause even characters who don't have any grab confirms or grab kills to be able to do a throw off the top and kill incredibly early. For that reason, if Delfino Plaza stays in the air and just flies around the stage, absolutely legal. Castle Siege. Removing transformations, it seems very plausible that we'll end up staying on the first iteration of Castle Siege. If that's the case, I don't see any issue with this stage not being legal. It doesn't have any glaring problems at all. Next up is Pirate Ship. This is probably a more on the iffy of being no, because I can't see how the ship wouldn't continue moving in the water. But if the ship no longer spikes you if you go into the water, as well as doesn't do the other, it's like a cannonball shoot type thing where it just like kind of flings you off the front. As long as it doesn't have any of these other hazards, as well as the actual ship not hitting you if you're in the water, I think it should be legal as a counterpick. Paper Mario. Paper Mario has a couple interesting transformations, but if it stays in the first, yeah, it should be legal. Find Me. While it does have one gap on the right side, the platform is big enough on the right side, as well as the gap being its particular size that I don't see any issue with that. The one issue I do see is the cage. The cage has a ceiling below it. And unlike Peach's Castle, where they're both off very much to the side, this is in the very center of the stage, which could really interfere with combos as well as kills off the top. So if the cage is still there, even with hazards turned off, that would be a no. Picture Chat 2. This is another one that could go a lot of different ways. If it just ends up being the flat stage with nothing that shows up in the background, it would be a Final Destination mirror. Something that could happen as well that I could see is that the things still draw in the background, but it doesn't affect how the players are interacting, which is still would be a Final Destination clone. Mushroom Kingdom U. It's another one of those things that it transforms. If it stays on the first stage, that's really the only one that's has any sort of legality to it. So if it stays there, then yes. Mario Circuit, Skyloft, and Woohoo Island. These three are all ones that would work really, really well as a flying only. They all have different platform placements as well as platform structure. So they would all make very unique flying stages that all would stand alone and not as a mirror. And then lastly would be Wily's Castle. I have my own personal opinions on this. I do think even with Yellow Dello off, if the platforms still are quite random and geared towards the left side as far as they go off, I still think it should be banned. If the platforms are gone as well as the Yellow Devil, then it should be legal as a mirror to FD, much as the Kalos Pokemon League is. Okay, now we're getting into the band. Absolutely no. There's a lot of glaring problems with these stages. These are going to go by much quicker since there's not really an explanation for legality. It should be very cut and dry. A lot of these are going to be repeat explanations, so let's just get right through it. Big Battlefield, it's too large. Congo Jungle, the barrel with all its randomness as well as the way the hitbox works as you're coming out of it makes you invulnerable, as well as a strong hitbox that you can combo off of. Just a no. Hyrule Castle, too large, and walls. Saffron City, it's too large, and walls and pits, a lot of problems. Mushroom Kingdom, walk-offs, walls, very, very much too large. Princess Peach's Castle, this is the Melee iteration, not the 64, don't get confused by them. The walls, separating the gaps between the two, it's just too big of a stage in addition to that. Congo Falls, we've already seen with the E3 demos that people camping on the rock platform. It just has too many problems, as well as you've got the barrel below, which has the same problems as Congo Jungle. So definitely a no on that one. Great Bay, you've got pits, you've got ceilings that allow you to basically spike people into that pit. Even if the turtle doesn't come with hazard toggle, there's just too many problems with the stage. Temple, just too massive, among all the other reasons. Yoshi's Island Melee, you've got a walk-off on the right side. The slopes, as well as the platform placement, allow for camping. Just overall pretty bad stage. Corneria, it's very large, and it's got walls. As well as it's got the little platform underneath, which some characters can't even get to. So, Venom, walls, drop-throughs that prevent advantage state. Onett, walls, walk-offs, platform placement. There's just a lot of unnecessary nonsense with the stage. Mushroom Kingdom 2, 2 pits on the side as well as walls, and 2 walk-offs. Just a whole slew of bad things. Brinstar Depths. It's just an amoeba of a stage. I don't honestly see it being any sort of legal whatsoever. Big Blue. Cars, ship flying, the hazard that really can't be turned off because of the speed of the stage. Even if it was just flying above a stationary road, you would still end up having walk-offs. So no. Foreside, very large, pits, walls. Mushroomy Kingdom. It's a pass stage with transition. It just kind of moves you along, obviously for walk-offs, and it has a low ceiling. The low ceiling could change, but it's just for the walk-offs alone, it's a big problem. Figure 8 Circuit and Bridge of Eldin, for the same reason, they're walk-offs. Port Town Arrow Drive. I have this on the no because it doesn't create any additional platforms except for the main one. So even if it stays flying, all you create is a smaller width flying FD, and the unbalance it has that I could see a lot of characters being able to take advantage of is just too great. There really just isn't a reason for it. But that does come into a community decision on this one only, that it could be used as an FD mirror. Distant Planet. It was close. The stage really was close to being legal, but that walk off to the left really just screws with it. Newport City, very massive. Very, very massive. Summit, you've got the ice mechanic and you've got walls and ceilings. So no. Skyworld we've already seen with hazards turned off. Doesn't allow you to break the stage, but it creates a bunch of ceilings, as well as you've got the bottom platform for camping. So definitely a no there. Shadow Moses Island becomes a ceiling only kills stage, and that's a big problem. Luigi's Mansion has ceilings. Spear Pillar. It's a 2-tier stage with a gap that you can't cross between. That would allow for very, very easy camping, in addition to, having ceilings and walls. Or not necessarily walls, but more of like the gap walls in between the two sections. 75 meters. Massive, in addition to the pits. Mario Brothers, walk-offs and ceilings. Hannonbow, pits and platforms that characters like Mac just can't reach. Green Hill Zone. This was another close one, but the walk-offs make it ban-worthy. 3D Land. It's another pass stage with walk-offs. Golden Plains and Gerudo Valley. Walk-offs. It's a common theme. Walk-offs kind of ruin stages. If you want to wonder why, a good example would be Ridley. A good example would be Sheik fair combos that she can just escort you to the blast zone all the way. Walk-offs are just bad. Spirit Train, very unorthodox stage. It's kind of like another one of those amoeba type deals where it just has no consistent structure. Dreamland Game Boy. It's a pass stage with walk-offs. Unova Pokemon League. Walk-offs, and it's very large. Prism Tower and Mute City NES. Even if you went stationary on Mute City, you would still have the walk-offs. Prism Tower, walk-offs. Magicant or Magicent, however you want to pronounce it. This one was pretty close to being legal. Unfortunately, because you can't drop through the main platform, that center platform that sits right below it is almost impossible to reach as an advantage state, and some characters can't reach it at all. So, because of that one problem alone, I have to put Magicant on the no. Arena Ferox has ceilings and walls, so no. Reset Bomb Forest. This one was actually a pretty close one. The pit isn't too much of an issue, but the pit in combination with the high right side platforms make it a really inconsistent stage to fight on. I'll go into this later, but Duck Hunt also has this problem with the tree. That's just how it is. We'd have to be a little more picky about what we have to deal with. Balloon Fight, no, walk off. Living Room, no, walk off. Even if some of the blocks form that create ceilings and walls. Tomodachi Life, ceilings, walls. Mario Galaxy, it's a weird curved stage with walk-offs. It's just kind of a bad stage overall. Great Cave Offensive, it is massive, absolutely massive. Coliseum, walk-offs. Flat Zone X, walk-offs. I don't know why I listed Flat Zone X as its description. Maybe that was because it's Flat Zone X. No idea. Alright, Palutina's Temple, massive. Gamer, inconsistent formation, ceiling, and walls. It's just bad. Garden of Hope, it's massive and has walls. Wii Fit Studio and Boxing Ring, walk-offs. Gar Plain, massive, walk-offs. Duck Hunt, just as I was mentioning before, has a very tall tree that prevents characters from reaching and camping. With stage hazards turned off, that means you're no longer going to be able to collide with the ducks and the dog platform. So that makes getting up the tree even more difficult. Wrecking Crew, Ceiling and Ladders, Pilot Wings. This was another very close stage to being legal, but unfortunately, because you can't drop through the stage to get to the under platforms on the planes, it creates a very unfair camping spot. It's just a big problem. Windy Hills Zone is massive. Packland, it's a path stage with walk-offs. Super Mario Maker. This is the most unpredictable stage, and how Hazard Toggle is going to affect it. We could have it where it's a consistent form, or it could be still creating a bunch of the stage, but it doesn't have the hazards. We really just don't know. I'd be interested to see what's going to happen with it. It could very well be legal. It has a small chance, but who knows? Suzaku Castle, very large pit in addition to a walk-off. Umbra Clock Tower, the platform formations, as well as the side platform stuff that it can create. It's just a pretty unbalanced stage. However, if you can get the toggle to turn off all the generation of the platforms, you could essentially use it as an FD mirror, but I really don't see that happening. New Donk City Hall, it's new, and it's got walk-offs, which is despite being a fly-around stage, that is a problem. Great Plateau Tower, we've already seen, even with hazards turned off, you still have the ceiling, though you can no longer collide with it with attacks. Moray Towers. Okay, you've got ceilings, you've got big vertical of the stage, allowing for camping and getting around it, as well as like the small walls. So there's this lower stage kind of camping when you're at high percent to allow yourself to attack and essentially live for a very long time. I just don't see it being legal. Well, that kind of takes it for our big long list. Moving on from that long list, thank you for sticking around this far, or if you've just jumped to this point. What I feel is going to be these 12 stages for our opening 2 months for Smash Ultimate. This will allow us time to get accustomed to the other stages without it affecting the competitive esports aspect. Unlike any game before, Smash is now out of grassroots. There is so much emphasis going into this game, as well as money behind it. The Switch, as of June 30th, was already 7 million more consoles sold than the Wii U in its entire lifespan. It's absolutely massive. It's turning out to be one of the best-selling consoles, and it's only had one holiday season. Smash Ultimate is going to be very, very massive. It is a big problem, as it is with 5 stages for starters in Smash 4, that explaining it to newcomers is already this tedious process. Because of that, I've created this to help simplify how to bring people into the scene without alienating them with this massive amount of stages. This, I feel, is the most concise that we can get it, with still being loose with being a new game. We have a lot of options to choose from, and I feel that we should really explore that to its fullest degree. But there needs to be a difference between exploration and the definitive competitive aspect. So with that, we'll get into this. Final Destination and Battlefield, no mirrors for them on the round 1 stage strike. They're very, very neutral. There's no randomness to them. People know what to expect when they play on these 2 stages. They're a huge staple for Smash since Melee. The next starter, I feel, should be Yoshi's Island Brawl. Much like the Randall in Melee, it's strictly as a recovery and kind of just an extra platform rather than a combo extender that some of the higher platforms off the main stage provide. The tilting as well as the curved main stage provide a unique mix-up game that will allow a direct plus and minus for some characters to choose between, rather than kind of just these flat iterations from Final Destination and Battlefield. The 4th starter, I feel, should be Brinstar. You no longer can destroy the flesh from both sides, as well as the kind of donut-shaped things, as I like to call them, that are in the center. In addition, no more lava. While there is quite a bit of a drop, a lower floor, we're not really opposed to having stuff like that, as Fountain of Dreams and Melee had a very, very low floor. You're not going to really have these grapple or wall things like you did in Melee to bring you back. So once you're kind of dead, you're dead. But it does present characters with better recoveries an option, in addition to be able to actually move through the stage to recover. In addition to this, the 2 side platforms hang over the edge rather than over the stage, making it very, very different than the tri-platform setup, where some characters can start combos on the base platform, move to that first tier platform, and then get to the top tier for these insane ladder combos. That's not going to be a thing on Brinstar because of the gaps between them. And additionally, the center platform, the highest one, is actually not centered with the stage. It's actually skewed to the left a bit. In addition, the main stage is not flat. This prevents a lot of projectile play that would come into play on, let's say, Battlefield from characters like Robin, who would just hide under the platforms and shoot things across stage and stay safe. This way, it allows you to still have platforms, but it takes away the defensive aspects and creates more of an aggressive aspect of the game, which I feel promotes pretty healthy gameplay. You can't really retreat to any of these platforms to camp because of how they're structured. It creates a very interesting neutral aspect that I feel we should prize. Moving on, the last starter is actually a choice between 2 stages. Whichever one makes it into the starter, the other one will be moved into counterpick. The 2 that I've chosen is WarioWare and Pokemon Stadium, or Pokemon Stadium 2, because both of those, as I mentioned previously, are identical. WarioWare, while it does have slightly smaller blast zones on the right horizontally, the platform structure is so unique that it allows for very tight moving and kind of this aggressive combo play. A lot of the characters who are very early percent combo heavy will want to go to this stage just to try to get their extended gameplay going. There's just a lot of neutral things that WarioWare offers that not a lot of stages do, and I think that's enough different but still fair that it should be considered a starter. The other side of this is Pokemon Stadium. We've had experience with it before. They did change the size of it, so unlike Melee where it was a very wide stage like FD, they did shorten it a bit, but the platform seems to be about the same as it was in Melee in relative size to the characters. It's just very, very neutral. It's kind of like having a triplats where you don't have this top platform. So you've got tiny extended combos in neutral, you've got defensive options that the platforms can offer, as well as tech chase situations. So both of these stages offer their own pros and cons for the players to decide upon that I feel are enough different from the first 3 and even the first 4 that it should be allowed as a starter. Moving into the counter picks, obviously the first one of that is the one that's not chosen for the starters. Peach's Castle. Again, doesn't have a bumper, and the moving platform prevents any infinites from being possible. In addition, you can tech footstools, so there's a lot of these jab reset combos just aren't as prevalent in Ultimate as we've seen. You can't really do jab, 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 let's say like a Pikachu thing, and then finish with this big extravagant combo. Just jab combos don't really last as long, so I don't really feel like stretching out towards the blast zone is going to be that big of a deal. In addition, the blast zones actually go out a little bit wider than most stages due to the 2 triangles sitting up at the 45 degree on either side. So I feel it's a pretty interesting counterpick that's not going to really have any glaring issues. Dreamland, Yoshi's Story, Midgar, and Fountain of Dreams. Fountain of Dreams especially is going to be controversial, but I feel like all 4 of these should be Battlefield mirrors. There's really just no reason to have so many triplats legal. The big problem I see from this happening is, let's say you're only allowed 3 bans, or even 4 bans if we allow this, since it would open up to 16 to 18 if you opened up the FD ones as well, stages. It's just an unnecessary extra thing that people need to be worried about, and that they would have to waste all of their bans just to get rid of triplats. The exception to this is Fountain of Dreams. I could see that being a counterpick instead of a mirror, only because the two platforms can disappear completely. But I feel like they're around prevalent enough, as well as the redesigned structure of the stage has actually made it bigger. It's not the same size as it was in Melee. We get actually already seen measurements done from the example that they gave us, and the platform heights are much, much bigger. It's very much the same that the treatment that Dreamland got in its restructure and ceiling size. Now that Fountain of Dreams also has. So I really strongly believe that it should be a Battlefield mirror. Next on the list is Frigate Orpheon. As I mentioned before, I believe it should stay on the first iteration. Taking out any sort of extra randomness, going to the second part of the stage with the flip, I feel is unwise. In addition, that stage, the second iteration has this pit platform-wise in the middle that would be super advantageous once you maintain that, because of covering the 45-degree angle as the only option inside. Even someone trying to run in to do a grab is going to come at this 45-degree angle that really is going to promote this defensive campy play and controlling the area. So I'm strongly against allowing stage hazards on for Frigate Orpheon. Halberd is one of those that I feel whether the toggle allows you to stay flying in the air or on the ship or both, it should be legal. Turning off the ship hazards once you land is a big deal that I feel isn't enough to leave it where it is. So there really isn't a problem with the flying portion of the stage as well as the land portion. The land portion still has this middle platform that creates a very interesting neutral game. Lilat. A lot of people are groaning just at the name Lilat. It is going to return. There's no reason for this stage not to come back. However, Sakurai blessed us in allowing you to turn off the tilt of the stage. So you're not going to have a lot of these problems. We've already noticed with a lot of stages, especially Battlefield, that they've fixed a lot of the randomness to their stage hitbox. So the visual of the stage doesn't always match the collision. Battlefield is a round sphere underneath now that you can no longer bonk, which is amazing. So I feel that with this dedication, and we've already seen kind of the progression between the demo builds, that Lilat has been changing. They've added textures, so we know that they've rebuilt the stage. Even despite that, I think a lot of problems came from tilting with the way the stage was designed. It should be legal. It is just one of those stages that just doesn't really have a problem. You can't overcome as a player. Smashville and Town and City. This is the most controversial thing I think I'm going to have to deal with this entire video. Music and aesthetic aside, Smashville has this platform that allows more than just a handful of characters in Smash 4 to make these chain attacks and kill incredibly early off stage because the blast zones don't match how far you get extended off. Because of that, I think it's more geared towards a counter pick. It just isn't as neutral as having something that's stationary. The only thing that isn't stationary that I've chosen for the starters is Yoshi's Island Brawl's Randall 2.0. And even then, because it's sitting just slightly below level with the main stage, you're not going to get these crazy extended combos because the way you DI is up at this 45-degree angle. There's not really any character that's going to combo you down onto that platform. Whereas Smashville, you can start on the main stage and start this big combo up onto the platform as it moves and then just take people off. It's nicknamed Cheekville for a reason. There's so many things that can happen on those platforms. As a side note, with stage hazards turned off, you're not going to be able to collide with Balloon anymore for both Smashville and Town and City. So that's interesting. No more interrupted combos or bouncing fish off of Balloon into these mix plays. I've seen more sets lost from Balloon interfering than I've seen in one, definitely. But it's just an interesting note that it was kind of made me realize what toggle really does change about stages. Town and City, it's another one of those that's a short ceiling. We don't know if it's going to have a short ceiling again because it's not playable in the demo, or it might be. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure. Regardless of that blast zone getting stretchered, as people have coined, as well as the height of the platform definitely moves it towards being a counterpick than a neutral. There's definitely more cons than pros on the neutral side of the stage when you're considering it. That makes me lean it towards counterpick. Aesthetically, people are tired of hearing Animal Crossing music. It just isn't hype. I love Animal Crossing. I love the music. Sometimes will put on just the whole OST and just relax to it. But it just does not get the blood moving, and I think people will be happy to see it go. What this makes is 5 starters and 7 counterpicks. I say 7 despite the list here because Battlefield's mirrors and Final Destination mirrors are tied to the stage. So if you went round 1 on Battlefield and you won, we now have full DSR, which means no longer it's the last stage you won on, but it's every stage you won on you can't go back to. So if you won on Final Destination, you're not going to be able to go to Tortimer Island or Kalos Pokemon League and potentially Wily's Castle and the other FDs that could come later. So with that being said, 5 starters, 7 counterpicks. This allows for 3 bans per player and still allows for full DSR. And let's say you went all the way to Game 5 and you didn't want to play on any of your band stages and they have their bans, you still have 2 stages to choose from for that Game 5 that you aren't opposed to. This is a very big list to choose from with being so picky as it is. We're allowed to be incredibly picky on this, and we still have so many options, and I think it's important that we recognize that. I feel this should be the opening list until after Genesis 6. By giving people a consistent structure of how things we know going in, there won't be a guessing game at the start. With the list being this big, I propose as well a single page sheet that will allow old and new players to avoid any confusion. By unifying the opening 2 months as Genesis is the first few days of February, we as a community will have time to prepare on an esports side without experimentation interfering with the rule creation. To this degree, Rage Toggle, if that's its feature, should be off from the start, and Smash Meter should be banned from the start until analyzed over those 2 months. In closing, we have a lot to be excited for coming into Smash Ultimate, but as we are no longer grassroots and more mainstream esports, we need to come together as a community to really solidify what we are going to be doing out of the gate with rules. We need to move away from each region having their own rule set. This type of isolated behavior is what keeps us as a community from being interconnected, and having a unified rule set will promote people into traveling to other regions, knowing what to expect, and not getting blindsided by odd or inconsistent ruling. Together we can move Smash into a respectable and cohesive community that will allow the longevity of the game to flourish. Keep in mind, these are my opinions of what the rules are, not a declaration. But what I have done here is set the foundation for something that needs to be addressed as a community with seriousness. If you agree we need to have this discussion, or just agree with my ruling altogether, please like and share this video across the community and get the word out. I will be making more videos in the future with a more specific detailing on each stage that just wouldn't fit in such a long video here. So please subscribe to stay updated.